Hi, Namaskar, and welcome everybody to another edition of Art, Design, and Conversations. And today we have a really special guest, somebody who have had a chance to meet in different forums and also share stage in at least one forum I can remember, the Malraux seminar. And somebody I love listening to because he's so articulate about his views on art, his passions, which is photography, and we'll get to know a little bit more about him, but a little bit of introduction about ADC and us. Beads, a Bhubaneswar Experimental Art and Design Studio, is a design studio which is based out of Bhubaneswar that creates elegant, ethnically inspired, and environmentally friendly products. We are a studio with a firm belief in the power of art and design to make people's lives better. Our products are handmade, contemporary, toxin-free, and with zero plastic packaging. And because it's a brand from Orissa, it's got a vision to inspire lives with inspiring design from the state of Orissa. And why ADC, you ask? Art, Design, and Conversation. It's a series which we've been running since almost a year and a half now, and it basically lies as an exploration into the methodologies and motivations that underlie craftsmanship and creativity in this great country of ours, and hopefully at some point of time beyond the nation, beyond the boundaries of our country. This encompasses an exploration of how craft items and creative items intersect with our daily existence in the environment, particularly within the framework of contemporary design ideologies and the escalating emphasis on sustainability. In this series, we commence dialogues with accomplished professionals spanning diverse realms in the creative industries in art and design. The dialogues here seek to unravel the ecological and communal consequences associated with mass manufactured goods, underscore the importance and pertinence of long-standing traditional artisanal traditions and other creative traditions, and spotlight the creative transformative role of mediums that reshape contemporary perceptions of craftsmanship. Given this really long explanation today, I'm so happy to introduce Varun Gupta. Hi Varun, and thanks so much for accepting this invite to be on the call here.
Hi Sandeep, thank you. Thank you for having me.
I will read out a small bio so we get to hear about Varun before he gives us a more personalized view of his experiences. So Varun is a photographer for the last 2 decades, a serial entrepreneur, and a lover of analog and alternative photography practices. He's someone who co-founded the Chennai Photo Biennale. We'll talk a lot more about it, and the Chennai Biennale Foundation, Chennai CPB Foundation, a non-profit organization that is focused on growing the photography community in India and South Asia. He serves as a collaborator and advisor to the Photo Australia in Melbourne and the Belfast Photo Festival in UK, and works closely with the arts organizations across India. His alma mater include Light and Life Academy and the College of Worcester in the US. He founded Traveling Lens in 2006, which is a company that conducts specialized photography workshops in holidays and remote areas of India. He began work with Art Chennai in 2010 to manage their photography exhibitions. Photo Seva is one of his long-term portraiture projects where he travels to make portraits of local communities across India. He's based in Chennai, and he has a dream project that he's been working on with the CPB darkroom. But this is a very, very small snapshot of Varun, what Varun Gupta has been up to throughout his career. So Varun, before I start off, your passion for photography just like blooms through in this bio. I mean, how did this journey start? Just like, when did you get absolutely obsessed with this journey of being in the field of photography? Is there like a pivotal moment in life?
No, it's funny. I guess I've been a photographer pretty much all my life in some ways. I had no idea I would become a professional photographer, but I loved taking photographs since I was a kid.
Yeah.
So I was 8 years. I mean, it was before 8. I was like 6 years old when I started borrowing my dad's point and shoot camera, which I still have. And it was the days of film, of course. So you would get a ration of 1 roll or 2 rolls, and my dad would have an SLR. I would shoot with the point and shoot, and it was just a way of like encouraging me, having fun. We used to trek a lot. We used to spend a lot of time in the mountains. So a lot of it was just, beautiful places, photographing them. When I was 8, my dad, I guess, recognized that I was really interested in this stuff. So he gave me my first SLR camera, which was his actually. And I still have it. I still shoot with it. And that, I guess, was a turning point. When having my own camera when I was 8, I would go a lot on rock climbing camps and trekking holidays. And I would always have a camera, and there would be 5 to 7 rolls of film on our trip. So there was a sense of personal documentation. I guess now, in retrospect, all of it can be sort of intellectualized, but very simply, I was just enjoying taking photographs, and I loved taking photos. And as I did that, I continued. I had no idea that I would come back to it later in life. I thought I was going to be a programmer making video games. And I guess I was, in some ways, maybe I wasn't cut out for it, because when I went to college in America and at computer science level 4 course, I just realized that no, this is not for me. It's too technical, and there is some part of me which wants to work on the video games, which is the creative side, but not the coding side. And so I kind of dropped out of that, but parallelly I had done all kinds of weird courses in college, and that's the great thing about the liberal arts education system, is that we can do that. And so having finished somewhere in a mix of communication and Zen philosophy, I decided that, I would work in advertising for a bit. So I did that. And then I was in New York, I was doing advertising, and I kind of reached a breaking point where I realized I don't want to spend my life behind a desk. I want to be out doing things. I want to be able to do some creative things, but not stuck and anchored to a desk. And that kind of led me to photography. So I went to study in UT. And once I learned photography from a professional standpoint, of course, I did a whole 15 or 17 years of commercial photography as a photographer, doing mostly architecture, interiors. And I did that, and that was great livelihood. But parallelly, I started exploring photography of my own, which is personal photography, and I think what people call fine art photography, which is something I'm not a big fan of. But I think photography has many avatars, and one of them is on the walls of a gallery or a home. And so I was exploring that, and that's kind of been my journey. And that's my personal photography journey, which I keep. What's great about it is that I felt I had to put it away for many years. I put it away. I've come back to it, and I keep going back to it. I shoot very, very regularly. I shoot like I have about 20 cameras lying there, and then I shoot constantly. But I've also de-stressed myself from shooting for money. I think that's the beautiful thing creatively that I made as a choice that really, really pays a lot back. Is that I no longer pick up the camera for money, and picking up the camera then has its own, I do it for myself and no one else.
I mean, when it's just funny, like when I was reading about all the stuff you've done and looking through some of your interviews, like one of the things that strikes me is that photography today, like in one of the talks you gave around the darkroom, you talk about the fact that photography today has become so commodified in some ways that, we all have phones on our camera, we all have phones on, we have cameras on our phones, and we've got like these point and shoots, and we're clicking all the time. There's so many photos we're taking by the minute, and everybody fancies themselves as a photographer in some way. But, to have that passion of photography, which you've had over a period of time. I've met photographers who've had this passion of photography. Like in India, now you're running an exhibition, you have the Photo Biennale. There are people who are coming and seeing what's good photography. What's the standards of photography that, excellence can aspire to. Is that something that, when you were studying here or even outside in the US, did you get a chance to meet great photographers or, visit great exhibitions or museums? And get like inspired by, okay, that's what photography can really do. Like, I don't think we ever have that. Like, I personally haven't had that exposure, unless, let's say, I go to the Photo Biennale or to like a photo exhibition per se. Like, how did you experience that? Like, did you meet someone? Did you see a lot of exhibitions?
Yeah, I think, Sandeep, the thing is, I've been very, very fortunate thanks to this, dream project, the CPB Chennai Photo Biennale, that one has been able to expose themselves. Now, of course, before that, in my own practice, I think that's where I was also stuck. It's very easy to get into the sort of groove of photography, and so I'll talk about two different parts of your question. Number one, I think, when you're a creator, when you're a photographer, and I know there's millions of photographers, professional photographers in India, working on all kinds of levels of economy, scale, distribution. It's an amazingly large universe, photography, right? Professional photography. So I think there it's really cool that there's so many kinds of photographers out there. But I think there is limited exposure. You're right. It's not like tomorrow you are in even Bangalore and you want to go see a photography show. There is none. Yeah. And Chennai, none. Bombay, maybe one. Delhi, maybe two. Right. So it's very hard to go and experience photography exhibitions. And that's something I realized very early on. And that irked me because, like I said, I was a commercial photographer, but I also started exhibiting in galleries, and I was with the Apparao galleries in Chennai, and I started my career with them and showing in Chennai, Delhi, Bombay. I mean, I was traveling, I was showing my work. And as I showed my work, I realized that, it's pretty, you feel that the only very, very few people get to experience photography. And since what happens is it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and it's this nexus that's these 100 people know about it. These 100 people buy it. They come to these shows. They see the work. And then you go to a city like Calcutta, you see that 100 is actually 500 because there are a lot of people who are into photography in Calcutta and Bengal because of the exposure to the arts. And you see that there is a larger audience. And then you realize that those are the people who really want to see your work as an artist, because yes, one part is it's wonderful to be sold and bought and collected. But it's also wonderful to be appreciated and to be seen. And I think, of course, the game has changed. And now I'll come to the second part of the response to your question. The game has changed. There's been the digital photography has been the great equalizer. The mobile camera has become, it's put photography in everybody's hands at all the time. And, if you've read our conceptual note from this edition that's coming up, it says that, photography is now a spontaneous act. You don't know that you take a photograph sometimes. You just whip out your camera because it's like how you know how to be. It's become how you exist, and you don't exist without your camera.
I agree. Yeah. I mean, it's become it's become almost a verb right now when you're traveling, and it's almost become a verb and a noun. Like if you are taking photographs, you're constantly doing photography of just clicking. It's like you're not paying attention. And that used to be back in the day when you used to travel and say, oh, look at these Japanese tourists and Chinese tourists, they're clicking away. They're not really experiencing the thing, right? The act of it almost defines your personality. It's become that over a period of time with that power of camera in your hand. But I'm so curious about photographers like yourself and the people who exhibit, that quest for excellence and pushing it in a direction of understanding how far can it push the medium. Do you believe that happens a lot more in fine arts and other places, while in photography it kind of gets limited if people don't really push?
No, I think the thing is the photography actually, in fact, it's really challenged us as a Biennale. If what's interesting is we call ourselves Chennai Photo Biennale, but we exhibit what we call lens-based practice, because photography is no longer just images; it's video, right? I don't think you can separate photography and video. And then a lot of artists work with photography as one of the tools in their tool chest to do other things, right? So they are manipulating, they're drawing, they're painting, they're using all kinds of historical chemical-based processes. They are presenting photography on top of video, video on top of photography. And then and of course the elephant in the room is always now in artificial intelligence and AI-based imagery, right? So photography is under attack in some ways, but I always say that photography was invented when photography was invented, it became the keeper of the truth. It was invented for the reason that painting was not being able to do what it should, because as a king, you could get your portrait painted in whatever way and it would be great, right? But photograph was suddenly the leveler, right? You were what you could see. And so then you would stage, you would do that. And then photography was invented, and then you were photographed 2 to 3 times in your life: birth, wedding, death, right? 3 times, right? And now you're photographed 300 times in a minute sometimes. And it's just happening around you. So I think it's interesting because the rhythm of photography has changed, and then the purpose of photography has changed, and now the reality of photography has changed. So what is it? I mean, it's a big debate between us and the organization also. We just put out an open call and we really thought hard, and we really struggled to make the decision that we're not ready to show AI-based imagery because it's not photography. And what are the ethics of that? So I think there's a bigger debate. I don't want to go there so early.
Yeah, no, it is a debate. I mean, it's such an interesting debate with all the imagery that's getting created, and you're trying to prove out this whole debate around deep fakes and what's true and what's not. I mean, the reason I asked this question is, like, you know, when I got into the field of arts and culture, like, one of the first things I was told is that if you want to learn more about Indian art and culture, especially of visual arts, go to exhibitions, go and travel, see what's the best, see what's happening out there. And I did a lot of it for almost a year, and there's a learning. But every time I try to do that for a photography bit, it's a lot harder unless you have very dedicated exhibitions like the Photo Biennale, where it's curated, it's thought through, it's figured out, and you go there and you see it. It's a lot harder for people to understand what excellence is, because everybody thinks that if the framing is light,
you're very right.
That's it. It's a great photograph. Like, it's a great photograph for you.
No, this is something we really struggle with, Sandeep, is that, honestly, like, it's because actually I don't think it's a struggle. I think the truth is it's an amazing thing, okay? Yeah. Compared to so many other forms of art, your barrier to entry is your eyes, right? And everybody's got them, right? Yeah. So compared to God-given talent to paint, and I hate saying that God-given, but there's a natural inborn talent or genetic talent. Here, your talent is there universally, right? And so I think there it's interesting because everybody's got it. Number two, what you keep saying is excellence. I think the challenge is excellence exists in everything. You can be an excellent commercial food photographer. You can be the best commercial food photographer, but that does not put you into the art world. Right? And then what is the difference, right? What is the difference? Because that's a photographer. Now, the difference is, I think, one is someone in the art world, typically it's the person who's doing it for themselves. He or she or they're doing it because they want to, and they are pushing it from an inborn desire that they want to create and then put out their work, right? Now, the thing is, there is a whole universe of photographers, and I am one of them, who has photographed the landscape, for example. Ansel Adams being the most famous of them.
That's the first exhibition I ever saw. And Ansel Adams.
So I mean, he's like the guru of landscape, and it's like a painting, right? And so I think if you take in that context, if you look at landscape photography as a tradition, the thing is, it's very easy to say, oh, this is pictorialist, because it's on the surface of it. You look at it, it's Yosemite, it's sunset, it's lovely. Now, today in the world of art, that kind of art has become, or that kind of photography has become slightly undervalued and underrated. Not undervalued for the reason, and I'll be very honest, I'll tell you the reason. The reason is, today, people want to see art that moves them, not just on an ephemeral surface level, but that talks to the issues and the problems of the universe, right? Whether it's climate change, whether it's gender, whether it's representation. There is a lot of things that are happening in the world, and I think today in the art world, in the Biennale circuit at least, and in critical contemporary festivals, it's become more and more important to be relevant as an artist. You must communicate about things that are important to you as an artist, and simply a nice looking image, however valuable that might be to the beholder or to the artist, is not considered of the same caliber as it is. Now, of course, I as an artist, and I keep struggling, is my own work is very superficial in that way. It is on the surface. I love to photograph landscape. I've done millions, and I have an incredible collection. I have shown this collection. I have sold this collection. I appreciate the collection. But now in retrospect, when I look back, I can also appreciate that where I was not able to cross a certain line, and where I lack as my artistic expression, where I was not able to break into this circuit, which is critical contemporary art. And I think that's a different animal.
Yeah, I think the reason I'm just pushing on this a little bit is because, like in the contemporary circuit, you're looking at in the fine art circuit, you're looking at concept, you're looking at technique, you're looking at the creative vision of whoever is putting stuff out there. And even to do that, it requires a little bit of excellence of putting things together so that it looks really good. But when it comes to photography, because of the instant nature of it, where and how do you draw standards which say that, okay, this is conceptually well taken, this is technically actually a great piece of photograph, and the creative vision of the photographer just shines through, and that's why it makes the photograph exceptional, the work exceptional, and do things like display and frames also add to it, or anything else also adds to it. I mean, those are those the questions that a curator would constantly be asking in terms of what constitutes a really good photograph to put out there.
You know what I would so again, Sandeep, the thing is, what's interesting is whenever we look at work in this circuit, I mean, in the Biennale world or in any of this circuit, I mean, I don't really consider myself a curator. I do have to curate sometimes, but a lot of my work is more on arts management, as you know.
Yeah.
But when I do look at work, I think the first lens to look at work is where does it stand conceptually? Is it able to stand its own ground?
Yeah.
Does it have roots? Does it have roots that can then grow into an idea that, I mean, because we're not looking to impress people with visuality alone. We're looking to trigger thoughts, introspection, to actually grow. Because I think one of the primary reasons why we do what we do is because we see that photography has one of the unique things. It's that it's got children doing photography to the greatest photographers doing artistic work, and in between there are about 100 different shades of grey, and all kinds of people engaging with photography in so many days, levels. There is a studio photographer who simply does the passport photo, but he is a photographer or she is a photographer. There is someone who is doing it for the newspaper every day, running around. There is someone who is creating it at a very sort of high level as a landscape or a wildlife photographer. There is also someone who is doing it purely as a conceptual artist. So it's this
is a wide range,
right?
Wide range.
Yeah. And how do we take each of these people on these different parts of the spectrum into a different journey, in a sense, right? Can we take the wildlife photographer to introspect, to talk about climate change and its effect on wildlife, instead of just simply the beautiful sunset shot of the tiger on the hilltop or in the castle, right? We've seen that. We can all, in fact, it's tough. I'm not discounting that. But is that at a certain point, I think it's also something to do with experience and time in the business or in the art form. At a certain point, you are able to think back and look at yourself critically. And when that moment comes, can we as a Arts Biennale be there to trigger that thought? That I remember seeing that show by that artist. So Senthil Kumaran, who is a South Indian World Press Photo winner. Senthil won the Wildlife Award last year. He won the World Press Photo. His work is actually black and white film photography on elephants and tigers, right? Done with the view of human-animal conflict. And his work feels like war zone imagery.
Right.
There are some beautiful portraits, but there is always a human in that portrait of an elephant, showing that how we have this constant conflict with nature. And so then, for me, that is not the wildlife images we've grown up with in National Geographic. That is the language of wildlife photography that can trigger you to think, right? And I think that's the power of what we're trying to do. But I mean, also, I am not in any ways discounting the kind of work that I do, which is, landscape photography, portraiture. I think there is absolute. So first of all, like I said in that video that you referenced in the darkroom, is that the first reason to do photography is for yourself. Then it's the others. So I think I as a creator, I am making images for myself. And I really believe in one, I believe in the Zen it brings me to. Two, I believe that it creatively helps me find ideas, thoughts and feelings that I don't otherwise have when I'm not creating. And so for me, I do it for those reasons. And then yes, time will tell of where it fits in the art world or
In the
not.
larger
in the art
spectrum.
world.
Yeah. I mean,
You
you
know,
have you have some photographs, I believe, that of your work that you were planning to share.
Yeah, maybe I'll just show like one project,
Yeah.
one Photo Seva project.
Yeah,
so
that'd be
that-
great. Yeah, absolutely.
I'll just bring up 5 or 6 pictures. I've just prepared a quick slide. So
Yeah.
So I've just bought 4 or 5, and it's more of a little story about the project. I think as a photographer, I don't know how many people who are listening are familiar with the idea of large format photography. Large format is essentially if you shoot with these old cameras where you put your head behind a chadar, and you shoot with the whole lens and thing. So it's quite performative. It's very physical. It's very tiring. And shooting with a large format camera is always like, it's a challenge that most people shoot large format, and a lot of Ansel Adams' work is large format.
Yeah.
It's the format for the masters, right? And this is the reason your negative is about so big. It's compared to a tiny negative that big. It's huge. You have quality, you have resolution, but also you have detail and texture. And so I was at the Kumbh Mela in 2012, the Mahakumbh.
Oh, okay.
We were hosting the Traveling Lens. My old company was hosting several workshop tours, and so we're doing 3 or 4 in a few weeks sequence. So in the middle of that, there was this giant floods and rains, and then there was a washout at the 2012 Kumbh, and 3-4 days of lull, essentially, that all our groups kind of halted. There was very little to do. Most of the people had left the Mela. Then suddenly it was possible to walk and without being like overwhelmed. So I decided to take out my large format camera, and I went and set it up on the side of a road against this fabric background that you're seeing.
Yeah.
And I literally went to the first person who was standing at a tea shop next to me having chai, and I said, "Bhaiya, aap thoda khada honge, mere ko photo lena hai." He said, "Kyon?" So I said, "Nahi, main photographer hu, main photo leta hu." He said, "But kyon? Mere ko kya milega?" And in a spontaneous moment, I said, "Acha, main aapko photo de dunga." And I had several packs of Polaroid film in that time, and I said, "Main aapko photo de dunga." He said, "Acha, theek hai." And so he stood in front, and I took 1 or 2 black and white photographs on negative, which is what you see on the left.
Yeah.
And then I took 1 or 2 Polaroids. In fact, for this gentleman, I took 2 because the first one that came out, my thumbprint had come on his face, so he got very upset.
Okay.
And so he was like, "Ye nahi chalega." So I did another one, and then I gave him that one. And so that kind of like, I don't know what happened. One of the biggest challenges of portrait photographer is when you approach someone on the road. First of all, I hate the act of just taking a picture and running away. I like to have a conversation. But then when you're having that conversation, you either have to then spend half an hour befriending that person and getting deep into their story. But when you have such a big performative object like the camera, you're also like, you can't just walk and chat. So you're like, so I thought, okay, this is a great idea. Now I can get into a transaction of sorts that I give you yours, one for you, one for me. Right. And so I did this one more day, not one more day. I did like 5 or 6 or 10 portraits in that same place. And then it became a big crowd.
Yeah.
And so I had an assistant who was actually my security guard from Calcutta who had traveled to Kumbh for me. So this guy, somebody asked him in the crowd that, kya ho raha hai? So he said, "Bhaiya, photo seva ho raha hai, khade ho jao." And
okay.
That name then stuck with me. I was like, this is awesome. This is the photo seva. So what you're seeing on the right side is the Polaroid that I give away, and the left side are the portraits.
Oh, wow.
I did several types. These are, it's also the kind of people, I didn't only do the Babas. I was also just doing normal people who were there. Very interesting faces. It was just very interesting, just beautiful textured faces. Then I've taken this all over the place. This is in Ladakh, and I'm just going to show one more slide after this. This is actually in Aryan Valley. Aryan Valley is, of course, they say that Alexander the Great's army, came and descended, and then this settled there on their way out. And so this is one of the tribes. And so they actually, in the dead of winter, we were just like, literally, we showed up there and we were hanging out.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I didn't even tell. I just set up my camera, and one of the people who we were staying with, he said, "Aap chat pe aao." मेरी मम्मी का photo ले लो. So I just went up there and then I got a whole parade of people in their costumes, and fantastic. And
so these are the costumes that they hang out with. Normally, this is what they're wearing.
So this thing is called. They dressed up for us, man. They put on this. Yeah. So this lady, this is a very traditional headdress. They don't wear it normally. They wear it when they go to festivals.
Got it.
The jewelry, actually, she was just hanging out within the jewelry.
Wow,
but this whole headpiece, the headpiece they wore obviously for the photo. I mean, you know, for them also because I was giving away prints, right? So they wanted their own pictures and, you know.
Yeah.
This is a very interesting festival in Kulasekara Patnam in the south of India.
Okay.
In Dasera time, they actually dress up in masquerade.
Okay.
So each village sends a troop of gods and demons to this Shiva temple, and it's a late night, quite frenetic, a lot of fire and madness, you know. But because I'm working with such a slow camera, which you literally cannot, like, each picture takes 15 minutes, right? Like, take one picture. So I couldn't go into the madness. So for me, I would just hang out on the fringes of the festival. Yeah. And as people passed on their way to the temple, I would just ask them that, come stand. And typically these guys are Vela, man. They're just going and it's like, you know, it's like, okay. Yeah. So I would just stop them. And this guy on the left, I love, you know, this demon fellow. It's just like completely blackface painted and incredible character.
He looks the part, yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. On the right side is, what I like about the right side is that it also talks about today how society has changed in who are the characters now become parts of your mythology. So the policeman has been allowed into this sort of universe that was occupied by gods and demons, right? And then there is this young person in, I don't know what kind of a costume, I can only imagine as a transgender costume. And so there is there are these fringes of society where there's tradition blending with this new modernity, you know. It's really cool.
Yeah. I think the lovely part of these photographs is, I think it's the format that you've taken. It's just, even without the color, just with the black and white, so evocative. Like, it just literally like hits you in the face with all the, I mean, you can imagine all the colors just there, even though it's black and white. I think that's the power of photograph.
I only shoot black and white on this project. One, because it was impossibly difficult to shoot the color and develop it in India at that time. And two, I think, for me, it simplifies.
Project. This is a continuing project.
Yeah. Okay. So I'll show, this is my last image. This is my favorite picture from the series. This is also in that Aryan Valley.
Yeah.
You know, this lady did not dress up for me. This is what she was just hanging out in. And it was bloody cold. Yeah. It was a dead of winter. It was minus 20 something. Yeah. And, you know, she was just hanging out there, and I just got lucky with the light and everything. And you know, this is a continuing project. I've done about 700 portraits plus so far. And where I am moving the project, because what I did a lot was go to places that were exotic and photograph, like Ladakh. Yeah. Now what I'm also doing is working where I live in Chennai, and I'm working on subjects like small businesses that are dying out, you know, like watch repair people, for example. You know, just little businesses that are going to slowly become extinct. You know, there's a lot of metal extraction businesses. There are a lot of little businesses that I find around. Also, like in Calcutta, there are these family-run lathe businesses. And so wherever I go now, I'm also trying to look for specific subsets of people. So I did fish markets of Kolkata. I did like fruit bazaars. So I'm trying to also kind of layer some of these and group these ideas, because eventually, I don't know, I'm hoping that someday I'll do a book from this series.
A large exhibition. That would be lovely.
Yeah,
a large exhibition.
Yeah, man. I
look forward
I have to stop doing what I'm doing with the Biennale and find some time for myself to do that. That's the problem.
Which I think is a great segue to my next question. Like, the Biennale, like, it's been, I guess, the defining thing of Varun Gupta. I mean, you search that and CPB and Varun Gupta show up almost side by side. Like, how did the idea come forth? I know you're doing something with Art Chennai, but just taking a photography, why not just an annual exhibition? Why a Biennale? Like, what was the thought?
Oh, tough question, man. So, you know, at the beginnings, the roots were Art Chennai. They brought me on board to help with the photography projects, and each edition, with 3 editions we did, each edition was more ambitious. somewhere along the line, we did our first big public show in a train station. And when we did that show, we did 13,000 square feet of photographs across this sort of empty, giant train station in Chennai.
Yeah.
This was 2010. And I don't know what hit me. There was a bug that hit me that this is what I want to do with my life, that I just really want to take photography to public space. And that first train station, I'll never forget it because it was the sweetest, most beautiful, most difficult project and done in the most tiny budget you can ever imagine. I think we did that entire thing in less than 70,000 or something like that.
Wow.
And I don't know how we did it, but we did it. And it affected, I think, not just me, but a community of people around me where we all felt super energized to say that here is what happens when you take photography into the public space. And it was a participative show. Everybody and anybody could participate. It was an open call where thousands of people from Chennai applied. We selected the ones we liked, 130, and then we curated this entire station. And it was really like, electric, the energy. And so I got super inspired by that. And
that station was that station was like an abandoned station?
No. It was a it was a suburban railway.
Okay.
But the Southern Railway at that time had built this gargantuan set of railway stations, thinking they would make them into effective commercial buildings with malls and offices.
Right.
But none of that materialized, and what materialized was this empty, hollow spaces of giant spaces.
Right.
And so we took those over and did this sort of set of shows. It was beautiful, actually. And after that, when Art Chennai kind of wrapped up for many different reasons, I think that left a void that, this city was pining and wanting to do some more stuff like that, but there was no platform. And parallelly at that moment, Delhi Photo Festival was doing wonders in Delhi. It really galvanized the community. We would go every 2 years and hang out and spend time and look at exhibitions and really get a sense of community that was needed. So I think, that all of that was happening, and I just happened to have a meeting with at that moment, the director of the Goethe Institute had just arrived in India like 6 months ago, and Helmut Schippert, and Helmut and I had this very fateful conversation in his office where over, 2.5 hours, we met, we talked about things and artists and photographers. And then he said, well, what do you want to do in Chennai? I said, well, I want to start a festival of photography. And I'm looking for the funding for it because Chennai had Art Chennai. Art Chennai is not happening. Delhi Photo Festival happened in Delhi, but that's so far from Chennai. We should do something in Chennai. And those, 180 or so minutes changed my life, I guess. And here we are.
I mean, and the philosophy for Chennai Photo Biennale was always about like photography in public spaces, driving that concept, and how was that panned out for you? Like, have you ever imagined, like, just like you have like the other biennales in this country, like Kochi and others, who have some fixed spaces where you're going to be running this all the time?
You know what? That was a dream I had once, but I think the reality of Chennai is it's a very different city from a lot of the other cities that are hosting these events. I think Cochin has a very special ecosystem because of Fort Cochin and what it represents. I think Fort Cochin has a cluster of beautiful heritage venues that are both state and private owned and that are accessible. Chennai is a living, growing city of 10 million plus people, 15 million actually. And so the truth is that this city is huge. It physically stretches more than like 100 kilometers from side to side. And so the thing is that, it's actually from Gurgaon to Noida kind of large, right? And so the city is horizontal as a city running along the ocean, and it doesn't have those spaces. But I think when we imagine the Biennale, we first imagine that we want to be where the public is, right? And so the public is in the parks, the public is in the train stations, the public are in the beaches. And that is a huge amount of Chennai city is public parks and beaches and train stations. So I think we started there. We learned in 2016 that parks were wonderful, but they had challenges. It was outdoors, it was sandy, dusty, rainy. We pivoted in 2019 in our second edition, and our dates are all off. So anybody who's trying to track the Biennale is definitely not a Biennale. We're more like a Triennale than a Biennale. But In 2019, we had our second edition with Pushpamala, which I felt is one of our most important editions so far, where we really challenged what was photography, even for ourselves as organizers. That we had always shown documentary photography, and suddenly here was Pushpamala, who was not a photographer; she was a performance artist.
Yeah.
She is, and she came in redefining how we looked at the medium of photography and really talking about how the art world looks at photography. Right?
Yeah.
And so we presented these shows, and in Pushpa's edition, what we were able to do is really pull off a coup by securing some of the most important historical buildings in the city. So there was Senate House, which had never been opened to the public in 40 years. It was full of pigeon poop, and it was just closed to the public. And so it took us 3 months to open, to clean. But then when we did it, the city came out by the tens of thousands to experience that, right? And it was art meeting heritage, right? It was a combination. We worked in several such heritage spaces that the city was not able to see before. We also did projections on the beach. So we decided not to do exhibitions on the beach, but we will do projections on the weekend because nature is quite brutal on the beach. And so projections were a great way to get the community together. Lakhs of people are in Chennai's beaches. And so you get people together, you show the photography, you talk about it. So we did a lot of that. And then we did the 2021 Biennale, which unfortunately got affected by COVID. It was really challenging because we had to do, I think, 70% of the Biennale online out of the 62 artists we only showed.
I remember you were like, I think, a pioneer in that. Like, you were one of the few Biennales that did a bang-up job of actually moving online, even though it was challenging and putting it out there. People got a chance to experience it.
I mean, I think it's one of those things that you're glad you did it, but you never want to do it again. So, you know.
I know. I was so, like, for us, like, for the entire art community, it was such a huge shock that you couldn't see so many of these great exhibitions. And here was Chennai Photo Biennale actually going online and making that effort to bring what you have. But I can imagine it must have been logistically a bit of a nightmare doing all of that.
Yeah, I mean, so the shows physically, what we had to do was, you know, when we do 60, 65 artists, then you can occupy a lot of space. And this time it was small. The only spaces we could afford to do this in were not government owned, because the government would close like if there were 5 cases. So private spaces were able to do it. And so we did private spaces only, and that was very small. So there was some choices. We invested a lot of money and time into an online experience. And while I still believe that the power of the online is great, but I think it's amazing. You know, statistical data showed us 1 minute, 49 seconds of engagement on a website that needs at least 6 to 8 hours of viewing time to complete as an experience. Like, physically, if you had seen the artwork, it would have taken you 8 hours over 4 days or 2 days, right? Digitally, you would spend 1 minute, 49 seconds. And I just, as a arts manager and a Biennale director, I felt so heartbroken from that experience that I never, ever want to, like, we will make a make a catalog website, but that is an accompanying app or a website to the Biennale. The Biennale will always be physical.
Physical. So what's the plan for this year's Biennale? What's shaping up for this year's Biennale?
Okay, I'm going to quickly show a couple of, one slide or 2 slides as I speak.
That'd be great.
So it's just easier with the dates on screen while I speak. So we just launched our theme. We just launched our new visual language in our theme on the 19th of August of World Photography Day.
All the yellows, but I see the yellows there. The yellows are signature.
There's some yellow.
No,
the yellows will be there. Our logo is yellow, so you can't get away from it. But this edition, I think there's a lot of things that are changing. One of the things we decided with this edition is that each edition has been a brand new experiment. And you know, I feel like we're going in a circle, because the first edition was quite like this, where we sought projects and artists that we really loved and experimented with as organizers, and we went after those and presented those. In 2019, Pushpamala was a one-woman curator for the entire Biennale. In 2021, we had a 4-member curatorial team, 2 from India and 2 from Germany. And in this edition, we've come back to a model in which, in a sense, we've come up with the central theme of the Biennale, which is why photograph, which is what you see on screen. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But what we've done is we have selected different artists, constellations of exhibitions and curators. So in some cases, we're hiring a curator to curate one show. In some cases, we are hiring an artist to curate a single show. We're curating group shows where we have curated the artists. So there's a mix of, and then there are a lot of projects that we have been running year round, because actually what's happened is between these biennales, we realized that there's so much more we love to do with photography. So we have I haven't touched on those today, but we have an education department called CPB Prism. Yeah. We have a wing called CPB Learning Lab. Yeah. So we have all these other wings of ours. And so those wings have so many programs running throughout the year that all of those roads must also lead into the Biennale. And so that's what CPB4 is. Yeah. CPB4 is our new experiment. We're coming back to our roots of our Biennale. We are, the theme is beautiful. It says, why photograph? And why photograph really questions what is photography today and why is it relevant? Because I think photography and its relevance is under fire. And I invite everyone who's listening now or later to please explore this online text, because it's very plainly written in English. This is something we have crafted ourselves. And we've written it keeping in mind that we want everyone to be able to engage with this Biennale. This Biennale is not meant to make you feel, oh, this art, man, I don't get it. This edition, we want you all to get it. And so I think we're going for that. There are some, I won't reveal many more of the exhibitions, unfortunately, because we're going to reveal that on the 27th of September after our preview for our VIPs. But the Biennale is set across 2 phases, and I'll explain the logic. Phase 1 opens on the 20th of December. And this meant, this is the time where Chennai as a city is very mobile. It's the Margari season, the dance and music season. So there's about, unofficially, they say there are 10,000 performances of dance and music happening in this period across 50 days. Okay. So in the context of that, we are going to have several exhibitions that are going to be open to the public in phase 1 on the 20th of December. Okay. Phase 2, which opens on the 17th of January, there will be several other marquee exhibitions, and I won't reveal any names, but the marquee shows will open on the 17th of Jan. What this does is it creates an environment where a lot of the outstation visitors who don't want to travel during the Christmas time for their families, a lot of the international visitors who cannot travel, they are going to come in the January period, also because the India Art Fair is shortly thereafter. Yeah. And a lot of this travel, this crowd that comes into the country comes pivoted to the India Art Fair or Serendipity. Yeah. So we've tied ourselves to both these dates so that anybody who enters the country in these periods can also come in.
On the circuit.
Yeah. And on the 16th of March, all these shows close. So first phase will be open for 90 days, second phase for 60 days. At the moment, we're looking at 10 primary projects, primary exhibitions that are ours, that we are curating or putting together. And then there are going to be an invitation program where we're inviting a network of galleries and other institutions and artists from around the country who are coming to Chennai and taking up spaces within Chennai for their own exhibitions. These are not shows we are managing, but we are inviting them, quite like the collateral program of coaching. And we will have a parallel program where arts events like performances, music, dance, all of these can come into the sort of smorgasbord of events that people can attend while they attend the Biennale.
And those will be independent of your curation?
Yeah, we decided to consolidate this time. I think there are a lot of lessons to be learned from around the world of Biennales. And I think one of the things was that we'd like to consolidate what we do, keep it as tight as possible, do that.
And these are
under-commit and over-deliver.
Yeah, and phase 1 stays open for how long?
90 days. All of them stay open. That's for 90. It's 90 and 60.
Right.
And we've tied up phase 2 with the India Art Fair, so we'll be doing some exciting things with them. They will be hosting some events during the opening. We will also be at the India Art Fair, which is opening February 8th. Yeah. So a lot of that. So, we've kept this in mind that we're open long enough. I think we'll realize this in 2019 is on day 27, people woke up and started flooding venues from around the country.
Right.
So I think the longer you're open, the Biennale model also works like that. The word gets around.
What's the challenge when you have such a long Biennale going on? So as an art, let's switch over to your other role, which is the arts management role, and you've been doing that so successfully. So what's the challenge of running something for this longer period of time that you've experienced? Besides the obvious,
there are a lot. I think one in this case is a lot of our venues are outdoors and things degrade outdoors. pigeon poop and crow poop is a real problem.
Oh, yeah.
And so
Yeah.
we have to take care of that. I think that's one of the things that things degrade. We've become better and better with working with outdoor materials, at the same time trying to be as sustainable as we can, so we minimize the wastage. So we work on that. Another big problem, I think, is staffing, because 90 days to staff any venue is tough, and you have a volunteer network that then gets sick, drop off the radar. So you have to have a lot of redundancies built into that. But honestly, what I like about the long play is that, the stress always when you do a short thing is that as the visitor you feel, and also as a local, I think that's where we differ from a Serendipity, which is in Goa, where it's all about the visitors, and Cochin, which is all about the outstation visitors. Chennai Photo Biennale primary audience is actually the Madras city,
the people from the within
population. And then you become like, this Saturday I will go and see this venue, and then next Saturday I'll see that venue, and it's got that ability to make you go and see parts of your city that you would not see. And I think that's what's really fun about what we're trying to do here. There are lots of channels, man. Permissions are the biggest problem. No gallery wants to give us a 90-day period because they're like, man, we've got to do other shows. And it's really hard to say, this is a Biennale, please understand. But that is one of the constraints we have. A lot of our invitation shows are not 90-day shows. Our invitation shows are 45-day shows, 30-day shows, 60-day shows, depending on what the gallery is able to do for the artist or the partner. But our shows are all going to be 60 to 90-day shows, depending on which phase they're in.
And the secret sauce. Let's hear the secret sauce. When Biennales are floundering all over the place, we're hearing about the sad demise of the Kochi Biennale, and Serendipity has had its challenges in Goa, and other Biennales are also suffering around, or large festivals are suffering around. What's the secret sauce of Chennai Photo Biennale? It's just a very committed bunch.
Some people, my team are listening, so I will say it's definitely the secret sauce of the team. We've built an incredible team of, at the moment, we have 27 people full-time working for the CPB, driving this hard. This is not counting the Biennale team that's about to be coming in. So this is what it takes to make reality of what we're doing. Definitely, it's the team, it's the energy that we have. But I think two ways to answer that question, Sandeep. One part is, we're lucky to be in Tamil Nadu and to be in Chennai, where the local population, the governments, they really believe a little bit in freedom of speech and expression, which I think right now is under fire around the country. So in that way, I think we are able, that we can stand a certain ground intellectually. That's tough for others. And I in 2019, we did have some questions raised about some work, and the government came out and stood with us and said, no, it's okay, let that thing exist. And it was tough. But I think those tough choices were made. And I think I'm glad that we are here in this state that, stands its ground politically.
I think it's crucial for you also to have the kind of state support, because a lot of your work is in public spaces. You have to interact, you have to get licenses, you've got to have them on board. And it's really good that you have that support. I think that's so vital, especially in the community.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is one thing. And then the second, is financial. I think, so one is freedom, intellectual freedom. I think our secret sauce just happens to be Chennai and Tamil Nadu's government, and its progressive, I guess, mindset in one way. On the financial sustainability, I think that's the biggest challenge, and we have no secret sauce. We struggle. There are months where we really have reds in our cash flow, and so we live in that. As the founders and let's say leadership, it's a constant fear we live in. But we have also learned that we have to look. The non-profit universe often gets trapped in the universe of philanthropy and CSR, and it's not really something so sustainable in India. There's other countries where the culture of giving is much stronger, whereas the culture of giving has a lot of taking in it. And I think here it's very different here than anywhere else in the world. So I definitely feel. One of the secrets, I think, that we have, I feel, successfully tried, and now it's become an amazing staple, is the darkroom and the shop. The Chennai Photo Biennale's most recent additions in April last year. We've started manufacturing and selling and developing rolls of film for the community. And what started on we punted, I thought it would be 100 rolls. We're at 17,000 rolls. sold and develop. And so I mean there is economy happening there that is because of the need. And in a need for the community. We are not only servicing the community because not many people are, but we're also generating revenue that's supporting then self-fulfilling and supporting other parts of the organization. We've also realized that there are things that we do that need to continue throughout the year, and I think that's what
is so crucial. Your outreach program, I would say, is one of the best that I've seen, which keeps it alive. It's not like something that's going to happen once in 2 years and you're going to wait for it and then forget about it. You just keep it alive throughout the year with all your outreach programs. I think that's a really powerful thing.
Yeah, and it's also what keeps us alive, Sandeep, is because, for example, we do a lot of this children's education stuff, which is with our CPB Prism wing. Yeah. We make curriculum. Our curriculum is in the Delhi government school system. 10 lakh plus children are benefiting from it. Yeah. We are in 850 schools teaching teachers right now. We are teaching in 5 schools in Chennai. So we do a lot of this, and through this we are able to raise funding to be able to survive. And I think through all of this, we do 7 or 8 things all the time to make sure we can survive. And I think all of that also creates an energy that then is perceived by our community, the country, that this is an ever-evolving, active group of people. And then the Biennale is just one of the things we do. So I think now the Biennale to us has also become, in a sense, it's become one of the 5 top things CPB does. I can't even say it's number 1 anymore. I think it's one. And I think while we are excited to open up the next edition, while we are just as excited to teach our new program in schools, we're just as excited about our new line of film.
Brilliant.
We're just as excited to to do any of our other things. But on the Biennale, I do want to quickly plug that we have an open call.
Yeah.
So this is the first time that we've been listening to our community. And like I said, each edition is an experiment. So we've been really listening to our community. And one of the biggest critiques of Chennai Photo Biennale is, how do I get my work seen? How do I present my work? How can I show my photography? And we've never had an answer because we've always had curators and the curatorial teams looking at art. So in this, in this first time, we've done an open call for the Biennale.
Oh, okay.
What's really cool is this open call is completely open theme. Anyone from anywhere can apply. Okay. So you simply have to just go onto the website. You just have to go look up CPB open call. You'll find us, and then click through, apply. There's a small fee which is highly discounted for India and South Asia actually, and it's another it's an opportunity for you to have either a single image or a photo series presented as a physical exhibition within Chennai Photo Biennale in a public space. So it's the first time we're doing this. I hope that this will, be something that we can make it into a year, or every Biennale can have one of these open calls, because I think globally this is where festivals have moved. That to be a more inclusive approach where anyone and everyone has an opportunity. It is not just a nexus of some art worlds that get to participate.
For our listeners, this is a great opportunity to put your best foot forward if you've been photographing throughout, and get maybe a chance to show up on CPB 4 right there in this beautiful image out there. I mean, so the last question I would ask you, all the stuff that you're doing, the education. I mean, I've met a lot of photographers, fine art and otherwise, really want to figure out what's the best way for me to become a better photographer. What's the opportunity for education in the field of photography that's available out there? I mean, you've got LLA, and I have a couple of friends who've joined there. You've gone there, and there are, I guess, other places where you can learn it in a certain way. But my first question, how do people get to it? And second question is, what are the things that make you feel glad about it, and what are the things that make you feel mad about it, or possibly things where you can improve? What's your take on the education system of photography here?
I think, this is something we spoke about the other day, Sandeep, is that unfortunately in India, we've come from this generations after generations of formulaic rote learning. So that's how we learn physics, chemistry and math. That's how we learn biology. And unfortunately, that's also how we have been taught arts, and more how photography is being taught, is that you want to photograph this is what you should do. And then and it's just how we are. It's not the fault.
What's
of
missing?
one
What would
institution.
you change if you had the chance? Like what's missing in this?
I mean, there are some institutions like National Institute of Design has an amazing program. Shrishti in Bangalore has an amazing program. I think what's missing is the why. Why photograph, right? So why I learned photography. I learned how to photograph a pressure cooker in 7 different ways, right? But I didn't understand why I was photographing that pressure cooker.
Yeah.
Right? And I think today we have taught too many people in the world of photography how to take better pictures. But we have not taught them to think about why they're taking the pictures in the first place and what they want their pictures to tell, what stories they want the pictures to tell, what they want the viewer to feel when they're looking at their pictures. And it's just coming back to, for me, why, because I really remember in a college like Light and Life, we used to do assignments. We used to finish every week. You had an assignment. You'd be working non-stop. You were taking pictures non-stop. You had 5 days a week or 6 days a week you were shooting.
Yeah.
But we never had 1 day a week where we were thinking. Yeah, it was not a thing. We were not asked to think.
Yeah.
We were not asked to say, tomorrow you need to make a set of images that talk about 5 reasons you are angry with your family. Right? Can you emote that in a set of pictures?
Right. Never
It was
did.
not there. We were simply, we were saying, go and photograph the landscape with this rule. Go and do this like that. Go and do this like that. All of these things we learned, but we were never asked to think. And I think that is what's really missing in India.
Yeah.
An institution that tackles, and there are a few, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but those that exist are one, very difficult to enter, which are highly sort of competitive environments, or financially, or in terms of admissions, or whatever it might be. And I think, there is a big, I'm not saying that there's going to be one answer. I think there's just need for more people to come into the space of education where critical thinking is taught before image making.
Yeah. And I think what you're trying to do with CPB and going out there and doing this large, education programs with different institutions, I think at some point of time, I believe there is the requirement of having good teachers who are going out there and then promoting people to think in this direction and get them to think about why you're photographing. I mean, that's such a great point of departure when you're trying to think of a creative vision for your photograph. I think we just need better gurus out there, man. The people who are thinking in this direction more than there are lots of gurus. There are lots of gurus out there. I think what it takes is that unfortunately photography is also a rat race, right? And everybody's trying to get ahead of everybody else. It's always competitive. So true. And I think the gurus exist. It's this almost, there's a cultural shift that's coming. It's happening. You can see it. And one of the shows we are presenting is challenging that. What is this? We need to break and we need to accept photography as our own language, because we've been taught photography with the British and the French. And then what is the Indian way of doing photography, right? Cartier-Bresson school of photography, but what is the Indian school of photography? What is that language? So I think there is a long way to go, man. We've gotten onto the bandwagon much too late, because obviously this, there were more pressing needs in this country of stability. But I think now, where we have that stability as a country and there's freedom, I think the next generations have. I mean, we are now presenting in one of the shows 12 different emerging talent. Not one of them are the big names you will talk about. We're presenting emerging talent who are unknown names. I think that's the kind of, there is talent and they are great gurus, but people have to go out wanting that direction, that growth in their brain, not wanting easy buck. And if there is one message you want to give to the young photographers of today out there, what would be the one thing you would like to say?
I would actually say go back to film photography. Give it a shot, because I think digital photography has numbed us. We've become so numb in so many ways that the mind and the body and the hand and the eye just cannot know what to feel with digital. And I think every photographer who I have helped rediscover film photography has thanked me for it, because it's helped them find their own love for the medium again. Because it's very easy to stop loving this passion of photography. And if you are reaching that stage, pick up a film camera, shoot a roll of film.
You heard it straight from him. Varun, thank you so much for this brilliant conversation. I know we'll have this out there and people will be looking at it. Is there any question from the audience? A few and far between, but I just might as well ask this question. Pragya, Mona, anybody? All right. Seems you've answered all the questions, even before they've been asked. Thank you so much, Varun, for your time.
Thanks so much, Sandeep.
Always great listening to you. And for all our viewers who are going to see this later, this is going to be available on YouTube. And you're going to hear straight from the horse's mouth. And we'll be back next month with another creative, genius, professional from where you're going to learn a lot more. Thanks, Varun. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Sandeep. Thank you, everyone, for being there.